Hey, pilgrims. Just the thought of telling the story cracks me up. And it's going to give us a little boost of energy. I don't know, maybe, I hope it does. It gives me a whole bunch of energy just thinking about sharing this story with you. And that's what happens when we participate in the Eucharist as a verb. We end up with energy, and it allows us to continue pilgriming towards the cross and towards the resurrection and towards our mutual Holy Communion. So here's a story. I work at Old St. Patrick's Church, and Father Dan Cantwell was the mentor to Jack Wall, who became the transformative pastor at Old St. Pat's. But prior to that happening, Jack paused just on the threshold of his ordination. And he was sort of asking himself, like, do I really want to do this? And so he took a year to contemplate that. And Dan Cantwell was his sole companion as Jack did that discernment. Turns out that Jack decides to be ordained, and his priesthood is mythic, it's beautiful, it's fruitful in ways that are hard to fathom, and I feel so privileged to have been witness to that. Dan Cantwell contracts cancer, and Jack invites him to come and live with him at Old St. Pat's. So it's one of those full circle stories. And this was when Old St. Pat's was in its infancy of its most recent renaissance and resurrection. It was old and tired and empty. And it just looked battered. And for a couple months, Dan Cantwell had been complaining to Jack about the communion rail. And it was a classic old communion rail. And Dan's like, we should not be celebrating the Eucharist with a communion rail because it gives the impression that there's people that are not invited into the sanctuary to participate in the meal. And it bothers me every time I say liturgy with that communion rail. And Jack's got about 9,000 things to do and no money. So he's like, yeah, Dan, we're going to get to that. I agree with you completely. Theologically, it makes all the sense in the world. And Dan would bring it up periodically. So now it's like 11 days before Easter. And Jack says, has anybody seen Dan? It was after breakfast. It's like, yeah, I think he went to the shed to get something, and then he said he's going to the church. So the communion rail is in segments, like 6-foot segments. And Dan Cantwell goes and gets a sledgehammer, which is about as big as he is, and the dude has cancer. And he's standing there like he's at a putt-putt course with the sledgehammer, just tapping the communion rail so it would move 2 inches. And then he went to the other side and would tap it, and he kept going back and forth until it just fell over that step, leaving this big gaping hole in the carpet, 11 days before Christmas. And Jack's like, Dan, what are you doing? It's like, I'm taking out the damn communion rail. And Jack's like, Dan, Christmas is in 11 days. We can't replace it. He's like, you can help me or you can get out of here. So Jack goes and gets some kind of little hammer, and the two of them, and they take out the communion rail. And then they had to buy like 5 flowers to put one in everywhere the communion rail is supposed to be, to just take up a little bit of the space where there's now no carpet. And Dan said, this feels so right to me, Jack. That there's no barrier between the people of God and the Lord's table. And that we're not standing on one side and the people on the other side. I don't care how the aesthetics look. This is more in concert with the God who says, everyone come to the table. I don't need to see your paperwork. I don't need to see your documentation. What is it that Pope Francis says? The Eucharist is not for the well-behaved, for those who attend regularly. The Eucharist is for those who are hungry. And Dan Cantwell, one of his last priestly acts is to take out the barrier between the people and the feast. And I have the privilege to come to that table with some regularity. And you do too. Thank God for Dan Cantwell. Thank God for a God who invites all of us to the table, to the feast, with the clear understanding that we will become what we eat. I pray, God, that you enjoyed the spirit of Dan Cantwell and that story as richly as I. As grace would have it, this little story is being taped in a chapel dedicated to Dan Cantwell today. So I feel his tiny, fierce, cancer-ridden, free spirit with me today. I share that spirit with you. Can the church say, Amen?